Welcome to Butterfly Bootcamp. My journey, a Butterfly Bootcamp tale. Let me adjust an audio situation here for a moment. And so this episode is sort of dedicated to closing the West and going into the cocoon. And that's sort of where I'm going right now. And I wanted to sort of let folks know what that means, what that is, and how it has been for me this time around. And I almost went live with this yesterday, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't because, and I even, this was the way I was going to do it. Okay, here we go. This is how it was going to be yesterday if I had gone live at noon on the 21st. I was going to come on here and I was going to speak very plainly and very really about some things. And I was in a very dark place this week, and that's a result of some of the shadow work that I've been doing. And this version of the West that I've been through is the harshest of the ones that I have done. And I've only gone through the medicine wheel 3 times, but boy, if the lessons had been this harsh the first time, I'm not sure I would have done it. So I was going to come on live because I had been crying all week, and I'm going to explain why in a little bit, but I had been, in some ways uncontrollably in tears all week, and I was going to come on with my puffy face and no makeup and red eyes, and I was going to wear my sunglasses because I was grieving for whatever it was that was, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about what it was. So, but I decided that instead today I will put on a little makeup to make sure you can actually see that my eyes are here and that I'm human. And sorry. Okay. So this has been the harshest West ever. And I think this whole thing started probably June-ish, May, June-ish. Could have been a little earlier. I was actually looking back and trying to identify the point where things started to feel a bit wobbly for me. And it could have been my father's death. And I kept thinking that, am I really having this response out of a grief response for my father's passing that I had just not dealt with yet? And I don't think that's it, but it's certainly an interesting coincidence. And as they say, there are no coincidences. So I'm just holding that somewhere in there's a space for the fact that there may be some issues here that are related to grieving for the passing of my father, and also sort of more generally and more broadly, family structures, right? Like both my parents are gone now, and so that family structure has now, dissolved, basically. And that's what going into the cocoon is. Going into the cocoon is a process of dissolution. Dissolution of the ego, of the soul, dissolution, a kind of breaking down of ourselves into that pile of goo that goes into the cocoon in order to come out on the other end a butterfly. And I know that probably sounds very magical and metaphorical, and you don't really know what that means. That's what I'm going to talk to you about, what that means. Because it is magical, and it is a metaphor, but it does have actual real world implications. So I was almost going to subtitle this "No Gurus, No Saviors," but I think that's actually going to be the topic of the next grief temple, because I've been very sort of morbidly intrigued by all these documentaries I'm seeing about cults. Apparently cults are like super common and popular in the United States these days, which in many ways just makes my soul cry out for how many people are finding themselves in positions where they have given their power away to someone else. So I'm not going to go into super detail on that right here in this space, because I'm going to do that separately in the episode for the Temple of Grief, which I invite you to join And for any of these, I just want to also share, like, please subscribe. If you feel called, donate a few bucks. I've got a virtual tip jar in the description. I am definitely feeling like this is the work that we all need, so I'm going to do it no matter what. But if you can throw a few bucks my way in the tip jar, that really just helps make all the engine work. If you find value, if you feel like this touches you in some way, if you feel like this resonates with you in some way. So, but the thing that this brings me back to is something I've been saying for a long time. We only heal by ourselves, and we only heal in community. And what that means is that we need other people, and we also need more than one perspective. So this, and know, you know, know if you have a guru and you love your guru and you have a really great relationship with your guru, that's fantastic and that's wonderful, and I applaud that and I'm happy for you. But I just am super suspicious of any sort of guru or savior relationship, because here's what can happen, and here's what has happened to me. And because I need to honor, you know, confidentiality, I can't really share details of what happened to me, but I can speak very broadly about what happened to me so that you can understand how and why it's important to have a variety of people that we turn to in times of crisis, a community of people that we can turn to in times of challenge and crisis, and that you don't have only one person that you're getting all your advice from, because you set yourself up to not have your own ability to discern from a variety of different perspectives what your own highest truth is. What the truth is that is most authentic to you, most real to you, that resonates most profoundly with your being. Excuse me. So this whole particular YouTube channel, this series, no, my channel is me. This is a series in my channel. This my journey, a butterfly bootcamp tale. This whole thing came about, as you may or may not recall from early episodes, from this sort of quest. How can I make my daily practice less boring? And there have been many lessons along the way, and those lessons have been delightful. But I also see in hindsight how right around the time I was feeling that sort of like wobbliness about my daily practice could have been around the same time that I started having these, what shall I call them? I don't want to say tendencies, but there were some, we'll just say there were some lower vibration feelings that were visiting. And I want to say that because so much in this field of wellness, and especially like the spiritual wellness and whatever people are calling the new age, I don't know, whatever you can call it whatever you want. But this kind of mindset wellness community, if it even is a coherent community, but that's another story. But this discipline, this area, there's a lot of, well, I used the phrase spiritual bypassing the other day in conversation, and there was someone that didn't know what that was. And so I thought, oh, well, this is a good opportunity to, you know, make sure people know what spiritual bypassing is. And also I've heard this phrase toxic positivity. And I think that in the spaces I circulate a lot, there's this kind of implicit expectation / covert demand that, you know, well, the understanding is that if you're all in alignment, your whole life should be flowing smoothly and everything will be in abundance and you will be successful and you will be this and you will be that and you will be the other and all your dreams will come true. And it doesn't really allow a whole lot of space for those moments when we are not feeling particularly aligned, and those moments when we are having a bit of a crisis, and those moments when what was happening to me is I was spiraling into a despair cycle. I'll just call it a despair cycle, right? Any of you who have struggled with depression, you know that sometimes it'll kind of come in and creep its head and be like, hey, what are you doing over there, right? And it'll try to needle its way into your existence. And so I had noticed that something was amiss. And you know, I have a community of people I go to, and there was something that happened in one of the healing sessions that was a bit triggering for me personally. And it ended up sending me on a really, really awful spiral of issues related to shame and unworthiness. And they were ancient. They were from, I don't even know what lifetime. Well, I have since worked with another person on what that lifetime was and what that lifetime taught me, which has to do with forgiving myself for my own failed expectations. So if you're feeling that, have you ever felt like you were the person whose expectations were the hardest to meet? Is that you? Sorry, I didn't mean to call you out like that, but I mean, right? And so in that particular lifetime, apparently there was this relationship to discipline, and I've always had a bit of a kind of a kind of relationship with the word discipline and how discipline is used. I'm not into rigid structures at all. I find rigid structures to be very stifling and very suffocating. And that now, on the other hand, fixed structures that have breathing space around them, like the blues, for example, which allow space for creative expression in and around that structure, that I'm down with. But the kind of rigidness of like, here's what you have to do every day, and you know, all in or not, has never vibed with me. And in this particular lifetime, this whole situation happened, and I felt very isolated and ostracized because I refused to conform to these very strict, rigid disciplinary rules. And so, and if, you know, all of you who are rebels, all of you who are, you know, like the black sheep in the family who are like, I'm not going to live by your crazy, stupid, rigid rules, especially if there's no reason for them. I understand some rules have reasons, right? Like sometimes it's in our best interest to follow certain rules, like brushing your teeth, right? But I was always one of those people who was a questioner who was not into that. And so these wounds that came up, they, you know, I worked through them. I was able to bounce back because I had a community of shamans that we turn to each other, we help each other, you know, we help each other through these kinds of moments that eventually come up. And in some cases, well, I had actually heard quite a bit of stories from my fellow shaman colleagues that, you know, sometimes occasionally you'll be working on someone and then some energy that person is working through is something that we also are working through. And so we have an affinity for whatever it is that's affecting that person. And so it can come into our energy field as well. And so whether you're giving or receiving, you know, if we aren't careful about our care practices to clean our field and to protect our field and to clear it when it gets, you know, some sort of something come in, then we can end up having our own demons and triggers released. And so there was apparently something recently, I say apparently because I've thought long and hard about how and why this happened to me, and the only thing that makes sense is if there was some sort of inadvertent exposure that I had to what I found out yesterday was an entity that was feeding off of these feelings of despair. So those feelings of despair that happened during, you know, back in June when there was a session where, you know, through no fault of anyone's, there was a triggering that happened in me that I then had to face and deal with, and it was very deep. It was the kind of wounding that made me afraid to show up in any way at all, like the very roots of imposter syndrome. So hey, you, I know imposter syndrome. It's over there hanging out, wanting to visit, and if that's you, you know what I'm talking about. So the other thing that this experience taught me, which is something I've been saying for a long time, we get to be in charge of making choices that support our well-being. That means we get to be in charge with our conversations with our doctors. We get to be in charge of what fuel we put into our system. We get to decide wow. Well, the reason That's so funny. I really just spaced out because I forgot what the main point was. The main point was you have the right and the ability to advocate for your own well-being. And that includes in these spiritual spaces, in these energy working spaces, in these yoga spaces, in these spaces which sadly are where a lot of these cults emerge, right? It's people seeking something. People are seeking healing. People are seeking connection. So the fact that these cults happen when people are at their most vulnerable makes me kind of gross out. My son actually jokingly said, "Are you obsessed with these documentaries because you're looking for another career move?" I'm like, "No, I'm not looking to be a cult leader." Though that did make me laugh. I don't think they're really hiring for cult leaders anywhere. But I'm looking at the words spiritual bypassing and toxic positivity because in the world that we operate in, it is so important to allow ourselves the space, and it should probably be a private space, and it should probably, I mean, I tend to be an oversharer and I tend to share my shit publicly, but if one wants to be protected, one could perhaps be private about their process. And that is why I'm going into this cocoon. I'm going to be largely off social media for the next 2 months. I'll still be doing my Temple of Grief I'm not calling them episodes. I'm calling them ritual iterations. So I'm still going to share those, but I'm not going to be doing much social media, and I'm not going to be doing any of these until January. Because when we do shadow work, because that's what we're doing in the cocoon, we've started in the West, and we're facing the realities of it in the cocoon. And in that cocoon, we are also tending to our dreams. And when we're in those psychic spaces, when we are greeting our soul. And I have been looking at this book, Bill Plotkin. And I actually just ordered his book, Soulcraft. I think it's arriving today because Soulcraft actually was published before this, and he refers to it a lot in this. But this journey of soul initiation is basically what I am sort of referring to as the cocoon in Butterfly Bootcamp. And there's a number of ways that you can access skills and tools and exercises and ceremonies and prompts to find a way to greet your soul, to really have that encounter with your soul. And what Bill Plotkin does in his group, I forget what the name of the group is, but they do it in these kind of wilderness outings. And so they take people out into these, really beautiful sacred wilderness spaces. People go on their 3-day wilderness solo treks through, we're talking hardcore outdoor adventuring. As a 55-year-old woman, I'm probably not going to be doing that. And I also know that there are other ways to achieve what he's doing that do not include that kind of, extreme adventuring, though a good connection to nature is, of course, of the essence. So I look to this as a beautiful resource. And he talks a lot in his book about how this kind of work does require some precautions and also some really honest assessments about whether you're ready for it, because there's going to be the need to face it's really like an ayahuasca journey. There's going to be a need to face some dark aspects of your reality in order to become whole. And that's why I get so bugged out at spiritual bypassing and toxic positivity, because it's not always just about okay, I'm in line and da da da. It's not all about that. It's about embracing the wholeness of who we are, allowing space for the darkness when it emerges, because it's going to sound crazy, but in knowing the darkness, we find our own light. That's the lyrics for the song that I wrote as part of the West, which I think I may have shared last time, and I'm not going to share today. I'm sharing a different song today. But I was saying all that because I think it's important for you to know when you go into these energy healing spaces how to Speak up for yourself about what kind of care you require. And I know that myself personally, I have tended to be rather cavalier about a lot of things, including spiritual healing. And I am learning, again, frequently, once in a while, that while there can be some benefits to a cavalier approach, an adventuresome spirit, shall we call it, there are also some drawbacks to a cavalier approach, because sometimes there is wreckage in the wake of, quick, chaotic movements in life. So I think I'm going to share the song now. And I want to invite you to receive it. Oh, there's rain. There's rain as part of our soundtrack today. I want you to, or is it snow? Yesterday we had our first flurries. I don't think it's snow yet. I think we don't get snow till next weekend. But we'll have the soundtrack of rain to accompany this song. So I invite you to receive it as gently as your soul would like to receive it, and as an invitation to ponder, how do I like to be treated? Oh, in fact, before we do that, I'm going to do a little exercise with you. One that I just I had forgotten about, and I recently remembered, and I don't remember where I learned it, or maybe I made it up. I don't know, but I feel like I learned it somewhere. What I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes and imagine a person who is your most cherished, most beloved. And you know what? It doesn't have to be a person. It could be a pet. It could, and they don't even have to still be alive. It could be someone who has passed. It could be a spirit guide. It could be just someone that you just, it could be a memory. It could be an idealized version. Someone that you just deeply, deeply, just the look of their face fills you with love and joy, just unbridled joy and love. And just imagine in your mind's eye, see that face before you. And then with your own hand, I want you to imagine that you're touching the face of your beloved, but I want you to touch your own face with that same intent and that same care and that same gentleness that you would use to touch a beloved in a most intimate moment of just affection. And just allow your fingers to caress your face. And just feel what your fingers feel like to touch your face. And then feel what your face feels like to be touched that way. And then just remember that feeling of just tenderness and gentle, caring affection, that feeling is something you can call on and remember at any point in your life, and you can treat everyone in your world, whoever you encounter, with a hint, just a tiny hint. You don't have to go groping everyone, please don't, you might get arrested. But just that feeling, that tenderness, that care, even when you're going to the grocery store. If you're one of those people that doesn't like the self-check, I actually like the self-check, but if you go through the regular check, just the person who is checking your groceries, just that feeling of appreciation that you don't have to do that. You can just be present. You can have a pleasant conversation with that person who is helping you do a very mundane task. And you can bring that sense of appreciation into it. And so I invite you, even though this song, and it's a draft, it's only got one MIDI piano and some MIDI drums. The song is very much a rough draft. But it does have, I want you to receive it as gently as possible. I think that's all I'm going to say. I've already spoken too much. So let me make an audio adjustment. Yes, we are still recording there. Now we are here, and here we go. So, on that note, I would like to wish you all comfort on your journey to comfort, peace on your journey toward peace, joy on your journey to joy, and just a gentle reminder to reach out if you need anything, to me, to your community, to whoever is your people of support. Let's offer each other the support that we need. Let's check in on each other regularly. Let's hold each other in the light whenever possible. And let's, allow space for when folks wobble. And just a reminder, please subscribe. And don't forget, on Black Friday, I am not selling anything. I am giving away a free meditation, at least one. I'm working on more, but there's at least one already set to hit at noon on Black Friday. It's just about an hour long, and it helps you tune out of the noise of the capitalist feeding frenzy, tune into a higher vibration of love, compassion, joy, acceptance, and peace. So, heading into the cocoon, to be a pile of goo and reinvent myself as a butterfly. So I will see you on the other side.